Where did the aura go in Call of Duty Zombies? I've been thinking about this for like a month, ever since CoD Next, and when I first played the map in DC, and then coming home to the lukewarm reception from the community to Liberty Falls, mostly on account of the map having no aura. And as you guys know, the other day, Treyarch released a blog post and directly addressed this subject. They said that they had continued to iterate on Liberty Falls and update it not only from a visual perspective, adding new, atmospheric elements, but also the audio and changing the ambience to make the map a lot more moody, according to them. And this has been met with somewhat mixed reception. I applaud Treyarch for at least addressing and confronting the situation and trying to do something about it. I don't know if it's exactly what I would have done or what the larger community would have taken the approach, but they at least tried something at the end of the day. This video is going to be a bit of a rejoinder to the video I made about the war zonification in Zombies. That was essentially focusing on like the gameplay and HUD elements reducing what Zombies is, but today is going to be more of a focus on trying to figure out what exactly is aura, because people have been talking about it, and this has been the center of discussion of Liberty Falls, more so than its gameplay and storytelling and all that. It's been focused on the aura, but, of all of the countless videos that have been made, I don't feel like we've really gotten a definition of what aura is exactly, and it may not mean the same thing to everyone, but I've been thinking about this for a very long time, so you guys can let me know what you think, and the more I thought about this and investigated this problem, the more complicated it got. Now, to begin here, let me just say that a lot of the points that I made about my Warzone video in Zombies are still going to be applicable here, and they are relevant when it comes to discussing aura. The scope of this video is going to be a bit more broad and abstract, and it's not going to be as precise as saying, oh, Zombie sucks because it has a Warzone HUD. It's going to be, there's going to be a bit more to it than that, but this video is going to be largely subjective. However, I am going to do my best to try to lay out my argument and try to keep it as empirical as possible, but this is also going to be largely up to interpretation, so I'm very interested in what you guys think as well, but I'll lay out my case as strongly as I can. I think the aura problem in Zombies really began in Cold War. In fact, I would even go so far as to say I think Black Ops 4 and Cold War had opposite problems, where Black Ops 4 nailed it when it comes to tone and style, visuals, and let's say aura, but it had a myriad of gameplay problems that haunted the game from its beginning, where Cold War, I honestly think got a lot of gameplay stuff right, and they corrected a lot of the wrongs from the past. I personally happen to really like Cold War's fundamental gameplay, but where it struggled most for me was creativity, tone, visuals, and atmosphere, and I think D Machine and Firebase Z are prime examples. In fact, when I'm thinking about it, I feel Firebase Z is the worst offender in this case, in terms of this map does not know what it is, and I can't even really put a finger on the tone of what Firebase Z is either. I'm not even sure most of you guys can, because it's not really sure what it wants to be. Like, is this supposed to be even a scary map? Is it supposed to be an adventurous map? What am I supposed to feel when I'm playing it? I'm not totally sure. It's not exactly horror. It's not exactly adventure. It just ends up feeling like this bland, uninspired military base. And I'm not even saying military bases can't be inspired. There's plenty of examples where that can really work. I mean, Der Riese is kind of a military base in a way. And I would even argue Der Riese has some of the most aura of any Zombies map possibly ever. But let's try to define aura as best as we can really quickly. And this is sort of the best working definition that I could come up with. I think aura is basically intrigue. It's a strong sense of an art identity that's serving a grander abstract purpose, and it's defined by tangible objects and artifacts in the map, as well as complemented by its negative space. Okay, so y'all are probably like, what the hell are you even talking about? Like, genuinely, what are you saying? So let's just take that apart a little bit. First of all, I think aura is defined by its intrigue, which is something you're interested in, but a strong sense of identity serving a grander purpose. Remember how I said earlier that I have no clue what the hell Firebase Z even is? And I mean that like in the most abstract way possible. Is this map supposed to be scary? Well, I don't think so. It doesn't feel like that's what it's going for. Is it supposed to be adventurous? I mean, maybe you might be able to make that case, but still, I'm not totally sure if that's exactly the tone either. Is this map mysterious? I mean, not really, but when you look at other Zombies maps that are practically glorified for their aura, you can pinpoint almost exactly what they are. Mob of the Dead is supposed to be a terrifying horror map. And so you can think of the very top concept of Mob of the Dead being scary, mysterious horror map, and then everything beneath it down to the last details of the map serve that greater purpose. The round change music, the art direction, the ambience, the voice quotes, and so on. But let's slow down a second because that's an obvious example. Mob of the Dead is an easy one. Of course, that has tons of aura and atmosphere, not only because it is so masterfully crafted, but it also has the real-life lore implications to work off as well, which add to the tone and atmosphere too. But let's try a trickier one. Now, one of the biggest complaints I heard about Liberty Falls is it doesn't have atmosphere or tone because it takes place during the day, right? It's just this big open blue sky. And yes, there's something there. When you have a map during the day, immediately I think that does reduce the creepiness factor for obvious reasons, but you can still make it work. Case in point, Shangri-La. Yes, you do go to a nighttime when you're doing the Easter egg, but for the most part, the general gameplay is during the day. But this map works because it knows exactly what it wants to be. It wants to be extremely adventurous while having a hint of mystery as well. The adventure stuff is obvious, right? You have like the spike traps, you have this maze, you got the going down the slide, you know, you have like moving these stones to unlock a secret pack-a-punch. You've got Brock and Gary on their time traveling adventure, and then you've got a bit of hint of mystery because you don't really quite know where Shangri-La is. While there are Earth-like elements, there's also a couple things that just don't fit quite right, and it makes you think that maybe this could be on a different planet. The whole theory of this is being on Mars, and it's even, you know, bolstered by the loading screen, which again, loading screens in Zombies really haven't had an effect in a long time. I feel like we've gotten away from that, but they can add so much to the starting tone of a map. And Shangri-La, I don't think anybody complains about that map not having atmosphere or aura because it takes place during the day, so it's a non-starter. Now, I've seen lots of people recently taking screenshots of like BO3 and BO4 maps and directly comparing it to Liberty Falls and being like, damn, this game has no aura. And I'm not exactly going to argue with that because, I mean, I do agree in a lot of ways, but it's not the strongest argument because a map doesn't need to have a fantastical setting in order for it to have aura. I would also argue Nocturne Toten and Verrucht have tons of aura for totally different reasons. I don't even think I need to speak on the original World at War Nocturne Toten and how it makes you feel. That map is very intentional from a tonal perspective. And Verrucht is incredibly terrifying and maybe the scariest map in Zombies, and it has this hint of like almost a supernatural element just underneath the surface that isn't really called to much attention, and it's very intriguing in that way. Shadows of Evil, which is my all-time favorite map in CoD Zombies, not only has amazing gameplay, but it has an unmistakable aura because it knows exactly what it wants to be, and they put an insane amount of work into the art direction into that map. You can nail down exactly what Shadows of Evil is, down to the most precise wording. Shadows of Evil is a early 1900s noir city with an undertone of H.P. Lovecraft, and that's like very obvious. And once you've got that strong idea and identity established, every single little detail in that map serves that bigger function. And I don't think that's exactly the case for a lot of maps that are lacking in aura. Okay, so I hope I've illustrated that point enough about a map needing to have a really strong idea and identity, and then every single detail needs to be in service of that also bigger idea. But what we haven't talked about yet are artifacts and objects in the map and negative space. Now, the first part is pretty simple. Artifacts and objects are just like the things that you're going to find in the map, and this is also like the details that serve that bigger role. You can think of something like, I don't know, the Apothecon Servant in Shadows of Evil. That is a wonder weapon that is like crazy, and it does not fit the tone of a, you know, noir city at all, but when you take into account the undertone of H.P. Lovecraft, it makes perfect sense, and it adds so much flair to that map. It really just helps to strengthen its purpose. Like, just for artifacts and objects, you can just think about things in the map that serve the greater goal. That's pretty much as complicated as it gets. But negative space is a bit harder to explain, and I'm gonna try to illustrate it with a few examples. When it comes to storytelling and setting a tone of a map, it is about what you say, and that means like the things in the map, but it's also about what you don't say, and it's the things that are missing from the map or left to interpretation. The most obvious example of negative space that I feel like are radios. Now, CoD still does this, like, you know, more recent Zombies maps have intel and they have radios, but I think the oldest radios in Zombies were this like audio only thing where yes, it is tangible, but at the same time, you're just listening to something and then you paint the picture of what you think is going on in your head. The best Zombies maps have an immaculate blend of artifacts and objects and negative space. I think Mob of the Dead, Durice, Shadows of Evil, even Transit and Die Rise have an incredible amount of this. The radios that are on those two respective maps in Black Ops 2 are amazing, and they're, you know, so so cryptic, and you basically illustrate the entire story of what you think is going on in your head, and it's still left up to interpretation. Now, I would say that more recent Zombies maps since Cold War have had almost an entire focus on artifacts and objects, meaning they're trying to paint the picture of what's going on by showing you things and giving you tangible stuff, and they're not leaving enough room for negative space and interpretation. I noticed this very heavily when I started to realize that there are literally some multiplayer maps in Black Ops 3 and 4 that I would argue have more aura than Liberty Falls. The reasons for that might surprise you a bit, but let's take a look at some of these. This is the fun part. Let's go to Black Ops 4 really quick and take a look at Der Schatten. This is a DLC map that is basically the town that you see at the bottom of Der Eisendrock. So you get to play the other side of this. You can even see Der Eisendrock in the distance, but in this map, I've always felt like this would be an amazing, like, small form map to have that's just like a little survival experience with a couple of fun, you know, small Easter eggs. Like, it doesn't have to be the scale of Der Eisendrock, and of course, it has the advantage of being associated with that map, so of course it's going to feel more zombies because it's directly tied to it. But at the same time, even if you just take the DE part away, I think this map on its own is intriguing enough where it could stand on its own as a zombies-like setting, and it's just down to the art direction, it's down to the immersion, the use of color. I mean, these blues and reds and greens all blending together is so cool, and then all of the negative space that, you know, you walk into a room and you see computers being used and you see things that, like, it feels like this was a lived-in world, and you can see remnants of it, and you start to speculate about maybe what that actually looked like. There's so much here in terms of intrigue, mystery, and this aura that we're talking about that it's a shame that this was only a multiplayer map. But let's look at a more direct example, and this is Artifact from Black Ops 4. Now, I'm not going to point out the obvious things that are, yes, this is a literal zombies multiplayer map. They have taken assets and just put them in like a museum, and it's a fun idea, but it's not the zombies things that I want to focus on, even though those are pretty cool. What I'm actually interested in this map, and the thing that I found the most intriguing, is the skybox. Now, Liberty Falls just has the most basic, like, just regular old blue sky, and I think a lot of people have pointed that out by saying this is the thing that is taking away from the aura and atmosphere, and I think that's a component, but it's not all of it. Simply making Liberty Falls nighttime or giving it like a dark ether storm isn't exactly the answer. It's a small component, but very small. However, like I said with Shangri-La, it's not just a map taking place during the daytime that's a problem. I mean, hell, even Kino der Toten takes place during the day, and I don't think anybody would argue that that map doesn't have aura. It's all of the other things in concert that make that map up, and it can take place during the day and still be creepy. I think Kino, the area that it really exceeds in is not only visuals and mystery inside of the theater, but it's also the ambience and audio. Just play Black Ops 1 Kino and walk around the map in complete silence and just listen to the audio, and you'll be probably genuinely creeped out. And we don't really have that as much in Cold War or in Black Ops 6 a whole lot. But again, a map can take place during the day, that's not the problem. So back to the skybox of this multiplayer map. I noticed that this skybox is like weirdly green. Like, it's still a blue sky, but it's just a little bit off. It's not even like crazy different. It's not this giant, grand, dark ether storm over top. It's just different enough where it feels weird. Once again, it's not a huge dark ether cloud that's very obvious of what it is, and it's kind of double meta because when you go into the map, yeah, it's like if this is a zombies museum, which is like artifacts from zombies in a multiplayer setting, which is already kind of funny, but then you walk through and realize, like, oh, a real zombie outbreak actually happened here, and there's bloodstains everywhere, things are broken, you'll go walk in and like computers are shattered, so something clearly went on, but you're not totally sure of it. And again, the skybox is, you know, not crazy different, but it's just different enough where it just feels a little uncomfortable, and I think that's really cool. But once again, as I said with Mob of the Dead way earlier, those are easy examples. Let's look at some harder ones. Now, there are two maps in Black Ops 3 that I want to point out. One of them is called Citadel. This is like the fantastical setting taken to its extreme. And as I've stated before, you don't necessarily need a fantastical setting to establish aura, but I don't think anybody would argue that this map doesn't have style and flair. And then when we look at this map here, this is a World at War map remake that was in Black Ops 3. It's basically if you just walked onto the set of Mad Max. It has nothing to do with zombies, but yet it still has aura and atmosphere because it knows exactly what it is, and every single thing down to the last details serves that greater purpose, and it has tons of negative space that's open to interpretation. This was one of the cooler maps in the game, and I kind of forgot it was even real. And then there's this final map in Black Ops 4, yet again another DLC called Lair. here. And this one's just crazy. There's this like big crystal called Archideus that talks to you throughout the map, but you walk through this facility and you see like, I'm not even sure exactly how to put it because I can't quite illustrate this into words, but you can see what I mean. It's interesting in a totally different way, and I think I would go so far to say that this is how you do a bad guy military base concept right. You know, you look at like D Machine as a bad guy military base, and yeah, there are a lot of cool elements to that, but then you look at this and the potential of what this concept could be as a zombies map. There's so much like cool stuff here, and if you're gonna do a bad guy military base, I feel like this is the way you'd want to approach it. And then you come back to Liberty Falls and you're like, oh, it just yeah, it just kind of looks like a multiplayer map, you know, like this looks more multiplayer than anything multiplayer we just looked at. And once again, I'm not saying that I inherently dislike a grounded setting. In fact, in some cases, I like it more, but you can still do a grounded setting in a way that's very intriguing. And I don't think Liberty Falls quite got there. And adding these ether storms again is nice, but I don't think it's the answer. And for the record, I've already played Terminus at Treyarch, and I don't think that map has this problem whatsoever. That map has a fine atmosphere and tone and a very intriguing atmosphere. That's like not an issue at all. Like I can't speak for the rest of the DLC season that we're going to get for Black Ops 6 if they're going to take more after Liberty Falls or Terminus. That's still TBD, but it's just very interesting how odd this one is. Now, I do want to add the caveat and say that we have not completed this map's Easter egg, and Treyarch have told us that there's a lot more to Liberty Falls from an atmospheric perspective than what we've seen, and I'm going to take their word for that. I'm going to, you know, reserve my judgments for after I've played the map here in a couple of days and we figured out all it has to offer. But just on face value, I do think the criticisms of this are correct in some ways, and I do believe that in order to lay out what Aura is, this is only going to be beneficial in getting better maps that have more of a strong, unique identity, because I still think Liberty Falls struggles to some capacity. It feels like Treyarch's response to making atmosphere is just lathering everything over in Dark Ether. This is the problem with Modern Warfare Zombies. Like, as much as it has some really cool bright spots, and I like a lot of the Dark Ether stuff, it seems like the only thing they ever do to establish Zombies atmosphere is just slap purple on everything, make it Dark Ether, give it some crystals, and then this is what everything ends up looking like. Every single Dark Ether portal in MWZ looks about the same. It's like a multiplayer section that's lathered in purple. And again, every once in a while that can be effective, but I don't want that to be the only crutch they rely on to establish some kind of atmosphere. I think that would be a mistake, and I think there's plenty of other more unique and special ways to do it. And so this was my attempt to lay out what Aura is exactly in Zombies, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree with it. But Black Ops 6 is out in a couple days, so my concepts will just be put to the test as the DLC season goes on, but I'll have plenty of content for you here, so just make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. That would be great. But I mean, I care about this so much, which is why I felt compelled to make a video, and I hope this ends up being something productive. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.